Hi, it's Chris Titley, and today on Scoreboard we're joined by Scott Roth. Scott, thank you so much for being part of this series.
I love it. I can't wait to get into it.
Yes, Scott, we're sitting here on the, what are we today, the 15th of May already. About 33% of the year's gone by already, remarkably. How's your Thursday started, Scott?
Well, I just came back from the beach, so I'm in Florida right now on my vacation from the season, and I spent about 2.5 months here. I left Tasmania obviously about a month ago, so I have about another 6 weeks to 8 weeks until I have to get back. But today I was down at the beach and enjoying myself and getting in the sun and fun. And actually, my evenings are when I actually go back to work in Tasmania because that's when the phone starts ringing about what we need to get done. And I'm in that mode right now, but it's been a good day.
Excellent. And when you are at the beach, do you still think about basketball?
You know, I think over the course of my coaching career, I've done a very good job, especially probably in the last 7 or 8 years, of kind of decompartmentalizing what I do and getting away from it. Before I was a fanatic and couldn't sleep, and it was 24/7, and it was really unhealthy for me at the end of the day, and I was really unhappy through that process. And I've gotten way better these last 7 or 8 years, and for me, I just go on long beach walks and just relax and just enjoy the day and just try to get away from it. But I've done a really good job, I think, in the last few years of when about 3 o'clock rolls around, I'm kind of done with basketball.
Right. I was going to say your relationship with basketball, has it changed over time? And when you hear the word basketball, what instantly comes to mind?
Life. I mean, it's been my life. It's been the number one thing in my life since I've been 8 or 9 years old and playing, and up until obviously today. It's given me everything. That orange ball has taken me around the world and given me everything I absolutely have, and it is life for me. But again, I think over the course of time, you age, you get a better perspective on where you are, and that's probably really been the biggest thing for me in the last 7 8 years. Is my perspective has changed dramatically of where I am and what's important to me now.
And what is important to you now, Scott?
For me, it's the biggest thing is just peace of mind. I think the way I see the game now is quite different. And again, I was a 24/7 coach that was always angry, upset, and trying to figure out everything and not sleeping at night and thinking I had all the solutions or answers that I had to get to. And you realize, and especially where I am, I'm going to be turning 62 in a week, and you're in your fourth quarter of your life, and it's really important to see where you're at. And I'm hoping for overtime. And that perspective really changed for me, and reflecting on where I've been and what I've been through has really put a bigger picture on what I look forward to over these next few years.
I'm about to turn 44. What do you talk to a 44-year-old person? What do you say to them now?
I think the biggest thing is to give yourself grace, to give yourself a chance to just have some peace of mind, and don't take it too serious. I think stepping away and getting a different perspective is really healthy. And I didn't have that. I was always on the go. I was always trying to make more money, get a better job, move up the ladder, chase a job. And ultimately in that process, I really was becoming miserable. I was doing well. I was financially taking care of my family, but personally, I was not feeling validated in myself and what I was doing. It was just on this treadmill. And I think you just got to give yourself some grace and step away from it and say you're good enough how you are. Do the right thing. Find somewhere that you really love being, and then settle into your job. That would probably be my biggest advice.
That's awesome. You talk a lot about perspective. I've got a couple of emails back and forth with you organising this interview. Down the bottom in your signature right now, you've got a little quote, right? It says,
Yeah.
"I will not let dirty feet walk through my mind," by
Yes.
Gandhi. I'm curious as to
Absolutely.
know where that came from and exactly like what it means to you.
Yeah, it's on all my signatures actually of everything. And again, it's the perspective of the last few years for me that, there's a lot of outside noise and there's a lot of things going on in the world and social media and everything. And in sports, you're quite vulnerable. Being a head coach, you're out in front. People feel like they can attack you or do whatever they want to do with you. And through social media and all the media that's there, you can get caught up in what everyone else is saying about you. And for me, it was about just turning the noise off and just inner reflective, making sure I'm taking care of my family, being a great mentor to my players. The wins and losses take care of themselves, and just changing my way of thinking. And that quote is quite powerful for me because I think it is one of those things that hard to do. But if you're able to kind of master that, you're going to have much more peace of mind.
You mentioned the word reflections there. Do you stop and pause and reflect on your achievements and what you've done in life and sort of get a bit of a dopamine hit? Or do you sort of go, oh, no, let's just keep going. Let's keep going to work?
No, I have. Again, it's all this perspective of my age, and I don't want to get into much of my history early, but I've had 3 of my family members pass away with me and near me, and my dad was the most impactful one that died in my arms by myself. I couldn't save him, and you get a big perspective on life and where you're at, and so reflecting on those things, especially now where I am, and my daughter 34, and trying to spend time with her and doing this job that I love, and being in Tasmania and traveling. You get the whole thing. And basketball, is something that I love. I'm super competitive, but I know that at the point of where I am in my life, it's not going to be do or die for me with basketball. It'll be about just a different way of thinking about it.
Well, you mentioned the word competitive there. With competitiveness, you probably have the W's and the L's, the wins and the losses. Your relationship, I've heard you talk a lot about the winning and losing doesn't matter so much. It's the competitiveness. How do you sort of break that down to be really competitive, but also accept the fact that you've tried your best and lost?
Yeah, I think it's just our culture that we've developed down in Tasmania and in general in my life is just grit and grind. You just try to do the best you possibly can, and you stay humble and hungry about doing it. And we've kind of had that model down in Tasmania to defend the island and work for the people. And we want to put a great product out there. We want to win a championship, but ultimately sports is not fair. And just in life, you learn a lot of things through life that aren't fair. And so to have a good competitive edge, to play as hard as you possibly can, and then step away with the perspective of you've done your best. And that's all I ask my players before we go out. I almost tell them the exact same thing every single game. I don't need great today. I just need good or average, and that will be good enough for me. And our players have a really good perspective. I think my biggest thing is I used to really think about the scoreboard all the time in my life. And now it's really about the mentorship. It's not about the scoreboard anymore. It's about the mentorship with my players, the relationships I can build with them, their families. They're hugely, hugely important to me. And my staff and how we go about our daily work. Those things are what really drive me.
And then going back to your youth and playing, were you one of those people that sort of beat yourself up a little bit when you had a bad game, and you sort of but the perfectionism was almost there? And can you see some of your players do that now, and you're like, I'm a little bit wiser now, it's okay?
Yeah, I treat my players probably as sons. A lot of sons I have going through the past few years, and trying to give them different perspectives on life and where they are. And we have some that are young families that are growing up with young kids and giving them perspective. And then I have some very young players that are starting their career. And when I was growing up, I was quite competitive with the fact that I played all the U.S. sports, and I was actually quite good at all 3 of them: baseball, basketball, and football. And I just kind of morphed into being more of a basketball player, I think, because it was indoors and warmer. But in general, for me, it was just that competitive spirit to go compete and see how good you could get. And one thing I did love about basketball growing up is it's just a ball and a basket. I didn't need anyone else around me. I would spend hours and hours in my backyard until it was dark, until my mom told me to come in to have dinner, and dreaming of those moments. And that competitive spirit of going out and then trying to perform was obviously quite exciting. And sports is one of those adrenaline rushes that you can get. And when you get hooked on something and you fall in love with it, it can be quite powerful.
And you mentioned the word dreamer, where you picked up the basketball at a young age. You dreamed of playing in the NBA. Was that one of the dreams?
Yeah, I was the guy in the backyard counting down, 3, 2, 1, and shooting a buzzer shot and thinking I was playing against these players that I watched on Sundays. And then I would go after Sunday afternoon and go down to the court and try to duplicate their moves, and dreaming of playing them. Not knowing that I would end up being there and playing against some of these guys that I was watching on TV. And you come full circle in those moments. But I wanted to be the best I could possibly be. I didn't know where that was going to take me. And I was lucky enough to get 300 scholarship offers by the time I was a senior in high school to go just about anywhere in the country. And then got drafted into the NBA out of the University of Wisconsin. And that started my pro career and the chase to get to the NBA. And I was lucky enough to be one of those guys that made it.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about the 300 offers. Were they all back they were mail? It wouldn't have been emails back then, right?
Yeah, well, back then there was nothing. There was no cell phones, no nothing. There were mails, and so I would get stacks and stacks of letters that were dropped off at the school that I would bring home, and so excited to show my mom at 15, 16 years old that I was already getting recruited by North Carolina and these other big schools. Um, and then you just funnel through the papers and you make the phone calls out of your house, and the coaches would come and visit your house, and it was a whirlwind time for me to be at that level and being able to know that I was going to go to school for free. I was going to play on TV. I was going to be in a big league. And I just had to choose the right school for me.
Yeah, and talk about the experience at Wisconsin, your relationship with them now, and I suppose how you keep following them.
I mean, I follow them. I don't have much relationship with the coaching staff and stuff there. It's all kind of changed over. I am older, so I haven't followed the coaching staff much. But Bo Ryan was the reason why I went there. He's a quite famous coach now. He went in the Hall of Fame last year, actually. And brought me into Wisconsin. And I had 4 wonderful years there, a lot of ups and downs that you have in sports. And it taught me a lot about life. And that was my first moment of being away from my home. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I go to Wisconsin for the first time, and I'm not living at home any longer. And that's 4 years of, independence, of trying to become a man and go to school, play basketball with the dream of maybe I can get to Europe. Maybe I can have some kind of a career, or maybe the big dream is the NBA.
And then the dream was real. You got drafted. You played your first game. Let's go back to that first game. How vivid is it?
Yeah, for me, my first game, I spent 2 years in Europe and I got really, really well. I mean, the reality is it was tough. I got drafted by the Spurs in the 82nd pick and went to camp with the Spurs.
A good draft, 1985, was it?
1985, yep.
85, yeah. It was a good draft pick.
And I went to camp and got cut in 3 days. And I was done. And that was the beginning of my pro career. But lucky enough, I had some European offers, and I went to Europe to this team in Turkey, FS Pilsen. It's still there, one of the powerhouses of Europe, and got better. And in 2 years, got better and was lucky enough to go through some other processes and finally got called into the NBA and signed a 2-year contract with the Utah Jazz. And that started my career. But it was quite the grind and a lot of ups and downs, a lot of people telling you you're not good enough, you're not ready, and just going through it.
And a lot of bench minutes, I'd imagine, too, and knowing your role in the team and then progressing to starting. You must see that in some of these other players that are itching to get on, but you got to go, actually, the team as it is right now, you are a bench player.
Yeah, I mean, when I went there, obviously, first of all, just to be in the NBA and play your first game. My first game was actually against the Lakers in the Forum. I got to guard Magic Johnson in my first game, and I'm coming off the bench and playing minutes here and there, and I'm playing with Karl Malone, who I lived with for my 2 years, and John Stockton, and both Hall of Famers. And, I'm living the dream, but I'm not at the level of those guys, and I'm just trying to survive really in the NBA and see if I can keep my foot in for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. And that's what I did. I just got there early, stayed late, and created a pathway for me to allow me to get to that point. And I share a lot of experiences to our players during the course of the season. They're probably tired of some of my stories, but the reality is that the grind and the fight to get in is real, and you have to stack days, and you have to be disciplined, and you have to follow through on what you're going to do. And it's quite hard when you're younger, and passing those things on to these younger players and knowing that there's something at the end of the day for you if you can just stick with it long enough. I just told my daughter today, she interviewed for a job. I said, everything you want is on the other side of hard, and you're going to have to find that way to get to that other side. And the resilience and grit to get there is not for everyone. And to be pushed and to get you there and get you uncomfortable, it takes a lot of pain to get over that edge.
And speaking of pain and uncomfortableness, every day is different in your life. Do you feel like there's uncomfortableness and pain in most days, and actually probably on a balance is probably lower than it should be, and you got to get that up to a little bit of happiness and an endorphin and dopamine?
Yeah, again, for me, my uncomfortability or my pain that I have now is much different than it was younger. My pain now is, making decisions on our rosters or having to cut players that I really love that have really impacted for example, Tasmania, that started the culture with me, and we won a championship, and now I don't bring you back, and I have to make these tough decisions that are best for the organization and where we are. And those are my painful days. When you fall in love with not only the game, but when you fall in love with the process of what it means, and then you have players that reciprocate that back to you, and now you have to have those tough conversations and sit across from them and say, we're going in a different direction. I love you to death, but we have to go in this direction. it's impactful to him, his family, and other people. And so those are my worst days. And if those are my worst days, I can obviously be quite happy about it. When I was playing, it was a whole nother different deal of, the ups and downs and not playing and getting cut and changing teams and telling coaches that you weren't good enough. That's a mental gymnastic that's really hard to deal with.
In the background, you've got the Timberwolves. Now, the Timberwolves, you played in the inaugural season, the inaugural first ever game. You talked just before about building culture at the JackJumpers. You were there for the first game.
Absolutely.
You also, the first ever win, the Timberwolves was an overtime win. First ever win for the JackJumpers was an overtime win. How do you go in your mind just going, this is almost a bit deja vu like?
Yeah, I mean, those jerseys behind me remind me of the journey. Those are my three teams that I play for. Those are my original jerseys with the Timberwolves, the Spurs, and the Jazz. And they're a nice reminder to come in and look, and I get a smile when I see those. But there's always parallels in sports, and there's always parallels in what you're doing. And, you can find these connections that are quite unusual. And that one you just found was actually quite unusual. And, they're just part of the game.
Yeah, and then I suppose the building the culture versus having a culture and having something which is, as a coach, you can make your mark on, I suppose, as culture, but from scratch. Like, this is a new challenge, and obviously the Timberwolves have built a culture since then, and in the Western Conference, hopefully in the semifinals or finals shortly. Where do you start? You just go, right, how do we build a culture? Let's get a whiteboard and go, right, let's go.
I tell you, it's 30, 40 years of experience when I got this job with the Tasmania, and I got there, and I think there's 5 or 6 of us in the front office, no basketball staff, no coaches, no nothing. And they said, Scott, if you win 4 or 5 games this year, be happy. But it's going to be a heck of a road, and it's during COVID, and you got to put this team together very quickly, and then we got to go play these games. And the number one thing I thought was not about winning or losing, but just finding the most high character players I could get that needed a second chance, that needed some love, that needed a new environment. That had an ego that wasn't too big, but big enough that they would buy into what I was going to sell them. And then more importantly, trying to connect the state. And I spent so many hours just driving through Tasmania and listening, not being the arrogant American that thought I knew everything from the NBA, and just listening to what Tasmanians wanted in a basketball team and the work ethic and the work culture. And I was lucky enough to come up with Defend the Island, which has now resonated across the state for the last few years, and our motto of what we go and how we go about our business. But for me, I was in the perspective of, and I think that was my advantage, as a young coach would have been trying to win right away, probably sacrifice some values just to see if he could keep himself alive to get to the next gig. For me, it was nothing about that. It was, can I build a foundational piece here that will build this team the right way? Because I didn't really care about the winning and losing in the beginning, but I cared passionately about the people of Tasmania, and that we were going to represent them correctly, and that we were going to build this being a state team. And so I spent hours and hours driving. I spent hours and hours doing what we're doing right now, Zooming and talking to players and finding out what their passions were. And I was lucky enough that I got the right guys early on. And, if you get it wrong, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. And so I got lucky, and I got the right staff and the right group together, and the right values right off the bat.
Yeah, and talk about those values and how ingrained they are with your team and yourself, and reflections, I suppose, of being transparent to them to say, this is what we want to build, this is our club, and then the buy-in from the players. How did you go with all that?
Yeah, I think it will start off that, you'll see and hear us, and you'll see our players have a common language when they're getting interviewed and talking, and you'll hear grit and grind, you'll hear humble and hungry, you'll hear what Defend the Island means, you'll hear the JJ's way. There's all these inner-built things that we and myself came up with that were buzzwords for us to mean what it meant to be in Tasmania, and our players bought in right away with that, and the community accepted us right away also. And so those values that we started to create externally for people to hear, and then we had internal values that only the players and the staffs really knew too much about. And we go by with Pound the Rock is an internal theme for us that we've used that is hugely important about us showing up every day and doing our jobs and pounding that rock. And so we had some internal things that we don't share too much with. The external things were really what we were driving our culture with, so that the people in Tasmania could hear it and understand it and wrap their head around it. And so when they saw us, they would say, oh yeah, that's what they're about.
And Scott, you talked about the club itself being representative of the state, and how important is the club's back office? How important is the CEO? The reason why we're doing this podcast is because I did
Yeah,
one with Christine Finnick, and
yeah,
lovely. She mentioned about the importance of the coach and the relationship
yeah,
between the CEO and the coach. And now you've got
yeah.
new owners as well. Can you talk about how you manage your stakeholders, not just the
Yeah,
players?
it's been a unique little journey there because we are separated office wise, so we're about 20 minutes apart. But when I first initially got there, at that point, Christine was the head of a marketing. I can't quite remember her title, but she was second in command behind Simon Brookhouse at that point, and she morphed into obviously the CEO in the last year and a half, and our relationship grew over that time, and we learned what we liked about each other and didn't like about each other, and we spent an enormous amount of time. She was very key in the branding of the organization and my vision of what I thought the organization would also look like. And lo and behold, she becomes the CEO. And, we're like peanut butter and jelly. We get along perfectly. We support each other. She's one of the first female ever to be in this position. And I really want to make sure that she's successful in that. Again, I'm in my fourth quarter. I'm on my way out. She's just starting her trajectory. And it's really important that I stand behind her and give her advice when I can and help her along the way. And that synergy is really, really important. And it starts from the top down and it trickles through our whole organization and everyone's, on the same page. And it's really important for me to set that tone. I am the visual leader of our franchise because I'm the one that everyone usually gets to see the most. But Christine is driving everything in from the front office, and we have wonderful people working there. And it's a family club, and it's run the way I dreamed it would run, and the fact that we're all trying to do the right things for the people of Tasmania.
And if you set like a 5-year goal, I don't know if you're a goal setter or not, of the club, where would you like the club to be?
Well, I'm not much of a goal setter. I used to be, and again, that's changed my perspective again. But for me, it's been more about building this cultural foundation, branding this team across the entire state, defending the island. And, in 3 or 4 years, I want to just make sure that the quality of what has been laid is for the next person in line to come in, that they don't have to do that all over again and that they can put their own little tweaks on it. I think sustainability is huge in sports, and the only way to do that is to have a strong culture and belief system and stick with it during the good times and the bad times. And when you don't have a great season, you still have these strong cultural values that everyone is living up to in the front office and on the floor. And those things I hope will be permanent. I hope that's part of my legacy there of building something that will be sustainable long after I'm gone.
And then you go to the players, right? You talked about the players and potentially cutting players and selecting players. What do you look for in a player when you're selecting them or making them a leader or being part of your team?
I've had these conversations with a lot of different people, and I think they find it quite interesting. But the short version is I'm just looking for myself. I'm looking for someone that's been beat down a little bit. I'm looking for someone that's hungry. I'm looking for someone that has an open mind. I'm looking for someone that doesn't have a big ego. I'm looking for high character guys that just need a second chance, a new environment, a new belief, and to change their mindset that there's something better for you down the road. And, I love the players that have been knocked down and have gotten back up. And we tend to have a few older players that are in their 26, 27, 28-year-olds that have been through some wars, maybe not successfully, but they've been through some things. And we're looking for those type of guys that will come in and have that blue collar mentality of what it means to work and have that ethic. Talent is a wonderful thing. Don't get me wrong, but I'm taking character every single time. And if I can get character and talent, then we're cooking with gas. But ultimately, our guys are very talented, but I know the character of our guys. And the thing that I love about them is they're great when I'm not watching. And that's really the most important thing for me the last 3 or 4 years. Can you be great when no one's watching you? Can you sustain our culture when no one's watching? Can you do that in the background of being somewhere else or on a bus or on a plane or walking through the office? Can you be great when I am not watching you? And we have those type of players that are just doing the right things. They're not perfect, but they're doing the right things as much as they possibly can.
You mentioned the word love there. I'm looking about the coach and the players, like the relationship as a human being, as a friend, as someone that you're forever. But then there's business, then there's sport, then there's all these selection things. And some coaches might go, no, the coach-player relationship, I'm the coach, you're the player. How do you manage that in the grey area? And what's your little, secret to
when
success?
I was growing up and playing in the NBA, listen, when they only shook Karl Malone's hand and John Stockton's hand. They didn't know who Scott Roth was. So when the coach came in that day, I probably never got spoken to. That was just the old days of I take care of the stars and the other guys just do whatever they need to do. And in the modern era, you got to touch them all. You got to be on top of what you're doing if you really want to be good at it. And for me, I lead with vulnerability and I lead with empathy. And we talk about a lot of things in the Jack Jumpers that I'm sure don't get talked about in other locker rooms, about love, about what it means to be shoulder to shoulder with someone, to understand their story. We spend a great deal of time getting our players to be quite vulnerable to each other over the course of the season so that you know who you're going to battle with every single day. You know why you're coming to your job every single day. And we're exploring the other side. You know, we're reading books together as a group. We're doing different things that are creating this vulnerability to each other that I think is quite unique in sports, but I think it's very powerful at the end of the day to create the connection. And, you know, team chemistry is a wonderful thing. It'll overcome a lot of different things and it'll get you a chance to win a championship.
You talked about vulnerability. You talked about empathy there. What about prosperity and seeing some of these players that you've coached go on to do better things, like the video that you watched about the selection of the Olympics, or they're getting picked in the NBA, etc. For people like Will Magnay, Clint Stein, or Jack McVeigh.
Yeah, we have so many stories, and that is the joy. You know, the agony is when I said you have to make the decisions. The joy is watching these guys blossom into great fathers. The joy is of Jack McVeigh that came to us 3 years ago that really nobody really had any thought about, and convincing him to do some different things. And then seeing his 3-year trajectory and then get to the NBA at 28 years old, like what a story. And, you know, last year to watch the Olympics, and we have 3 guys from the Jack Jumpers running around in the Olympics in Paris, 2 boomers and 1 in the South Sudan and Majuk Dang. And so that joy of where we started and then to win a championship and see these players' success and my coach's success. And we have some obviously Tasmanian coaches, and to see the joy that probably in their lifetime they haven't had or ever believed that they would win a national championship like that for Tasmania. That's what it's all about for me. I mean, those moments are priceless.
And then on the other side of the curve, you're looking at Jason Tatum recently with the Achilles injury and just the heartbreak as well.
Yeah.
And that's sport and that's life. And how do you comfort some of your players that you think, oh, this person's going on the right trajectory, and then bang, the Achilles goes?
We had it this year. We had multiple guys that were really about ready to take off and come back. And, you know, Sean McDonald's a perfect example of getting hurt twice for us and knocked out most of the season. And then Will Magnay's playing the best basketball he's ever played of his life, and then he breaks a toe of all things, and we misses the last 8 or 9 games for us. And so those moments are heartbreaking because, you know, they're so close to breaking through, and then there's that wall. But it is, again, the grit and the resilience to get back up on your feet, and can you go back and do it again? And again, it goes back to finding the right guys with the right character and the right mindset to have that mode. But it's heartbreaking. Sports are heartbreaking. Again, it is not fair. And you can do everything right and still somehow or another not live up to what everyone else is thinking about.
And basketball has been such a big part of your life. And over the course of the time, we're living in a digital age. We're living in a technology age. There's data points everywhere. How do you go with all the data points now?
You know, I keep it by KISS. I keep it simple, stupid. So I'm very in a silo in a lot of ways, and just try to just stay in my lane. And I'm not the smartest guy by any means, and I try to keep his things simple and stay away from all that stuff. And if something is important, it'll get to me, and I'll take a look at it. But for the most part, for me, is I stay in the silo and stay off of social media, stay off the things that are I don't want to see or hear or think about. And then the data and all that other stuff is just, you know, numbers at the end of the day. You know, human beings play basketball. It's not one on paper. It's actually one on the court, and it's done with the work. The game's quite simple. It really is at the end of the day. It's just can you duplicate and stack days and have a little luck? And if you are able to do that and have great players with great culture, you're in a good spot.
In the previous podcast I did with Christine Finnegan, she said these words, feedback is a gift. And I've never heard that before. And it actually really hit me hard because of, you know, being a parent and a dad, etc. I'm interested to know your thoughts on feedback, criticism, all that negative noise that I suppose you can get on social media, which you don't read. But do you ever sometimes sort of read it and go, oh, okay, that's what they're saying?
Yeah, well, listen, early on, it drove me nuts. It drove me to the point of really probably depression and just being pissed off every day because, you know, people are saying crazy things about you and you're reading it the more the social media became involved, the more you're seeing it. And it's really easy to say, well, don't look at it, don't watch it. But it's really hard for these young guys to turn that off. That's how they live their lives. And for me early on, that stuff drove me nuts, because it was attacking my wife, attacking my daughter, attacking me, telling me I'm the worst coach ever. All these things can be quite hurtful. And eventually you do have to kind of just turn this noise down and move forward with your life. And those moments, again, for me in the last few years of I will not allow dirty feet to walk through my mind. I'm just not going to put out with it or tolerate it. And I do read things here and there, and things get sent to me. But I'm not driven by those people. The people that matter to me in my life are the ones that are super close to me, and I'll take their feedback any day.
And when it comes to learning and understanding about different techniques, I suppose there's coaching. You say you swim your own race, but surely do you kind of like look at other coaches or players and you go, actually, how do I learn from them and how do I become a better coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, no coach really has invented very much. Everyone's stealing everything from everyone. I don't care what sport you're in. You're on YouTube. You're stealing different plays. You're watching different teams play. And I'm learning from my coaches, and they're seeing different things, and their interpretation of something is quite different than me. And there might be 30-year age difference between one of my coaches and me, and they're seeing the game in a different way than I would. And so you have to be, eyes and ears, and you have to take some of that criticism or response back or other ideas and process that for yourself. But everyone's stealing everyone's stuff. There's nothing that's overly been invented. Basketball, again, is quite simple overall. The refereeing changes, the entertainment factor changes, some of the exterior things of the games change. But on the floor, there's only 10 guys running around, and the court's only so big, and there's only so many things you can do.
And in terms of coaches, you've had a pretty special relationship with Don Nelson in your life. Do you want to talk about how that began, and I suppose the communication that you have with him now, and the friendship?
It's actually, I think his birthday is tomorrow. Now that you remind me, so I think it is tomorrow. But I'm actually looking at a photo here in front of me here of when we won his second last game of the year of being the winningest coach in NBA history until Pop broke it the other day, and last year, pardon me. But he was a special guy for me. I got him early in his middle of his career with the Mavericks, with Dirk Nowitzki and Nash and those guys, and learned a ton from him. And I was just starting to figure out how much I loved coaching or not coaching or what I really wanted to do. And then I was lucky enough to get him at the very end of his last year and live with him the entire season up in his penthouse on the other side of the penthouse. We had Steph Curry and a wonderful team, and we won him the winningest coach in NBA history by the end of that season. And I was like going home with the greatest professor you ever had in school and spending all day with them, and then coming home at night after games and sitting there watching TVs and smoking cigars with them and watching the replays of all the other NBA games, asking them crazy questions. And it was incredible last year with him. And then, now it's just one of those things where I will give him a call tomorrow and bust his chops a little bit. And he's older and moving on and living in Maui and enjoying himself. But those mentorships and those moments are quite special.
Yeah, there's particularly the smoking the cigars. You're quite well known for that as well. So
absolutely,
and I suppose from his point of view, would have seen a lot of technological changes and Greg Popovich as well. Yep. What do you? I suppose the players that you've come across, is there one or two that has stand out? You said that they're children, so it's hard to pick your favorite children. But is there something that you kind of remember and go, that was just a really, really good moment?
I mean, there's just so many of those, and there's so many special players that I've been lucky to coach, some Hall of Famers and Paul Gasol and Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Nash, and there's quite a big list of the guys I've been lucky to be around, and then in the current team that I have. And the biggest thing really I take away from is not really the playing; it's just the people. Like, have these guys come to your house and have dinner with you, and they're just normal dudes at the end of the day and enjoying life and just want to enjoy themselves. And those are really special moments. Dirk came to Tasmania 3 years ago and spent about 4 hours with our group in the morning with our players, and you would have thought he was just one of the guys hanging out. He had his 2 kids running around shooting hoops with our guys. He had dinner. He enjoyed himself. Those are the special moments of just someone that's laid back. It's priceless, really, to have that kind of guy with that kind of character in your building or in your sites, and those are really special times.
We've got to talk about Australia for a second. You've come to Australia. You've been coaching in Australia now for, I think 7 or 8 years. Is that right? Yep. Something like that.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to be there for a few, yeah.
And how do you describe Australia?
I think for me, from a sporting landscape or just in
Yeah,
general?
in
Yeah,
general and in sporting landscape.
I
Yeah.
think from a sporting landscape, um, it's been exciting to watch. Just for me, the culture of the teams that are hugely important. I saw the All Blacks and understood what they're about, and then you get to read James Kerr's book Legacy and understand what the All Blacks are about, and then I get to Australia and I start to see the culture in their sports and the AFL and how they play and all that. And then I get the chance to go to Perth and 36 years of unbelievable culture. When you put that red shirt on, it means something. And I never really felt that. You don't have that kind of feeling in the United States. Now, there's some great companies, some great schools, but the actual culture of having something built that's sustainable that you're seeing every single day and feeling when you walk in the building, I never had that until I got to Australia. And that's one of the things I wanted to duplicate when I got to Tasmania. And I think the conformity of the people, the rallying around one team or run sport, is quite powerful. And it's one of those things I really cherish about the fan bases there that are really passionate about who they cheer for, but they're very much about doing the right thing, and they really love the teams that are doing the right thing. And a lot of times we hear that we're the second favorite team in Australia for a lot of players and a lot of people because of how we carried ourselves. And I'm quite proud of that. Living in Australia, second to none. The quality of life is incredible. I've been lucky enough to travel quite a bit, obviously through the basketball there, and I haven't been anywhere that's been like, oh my God, I wish I'd never go there again. They're all beautiful areas. The coastlines are incredible up and down. Tasmania is special in its own way of how different it is from actually the mainland in some areas, but the quality of life in Australia is incredible.
Now, you talked about AFL there for a second, and Tasmania's going to get a team coming soon in the AFL. When you watched AFL for the first time, what was your reaction?
Well, I didn't know what the hell was going on because I saw 36 guys or 50 guys, I don't know how many on the field, and I was like, are they all playing? And then the TV only captured about a fourth of the actual players because there's another 30 of them on the other side of the area over there. So in the beginning, it was just, I thought, what are all these people doing out there until I could figure out what was actually going on. But it is a very interesting sport. It's obviously very Australian, and it's a passion and a love, and it's been fun to watch. And I've kind of had a lot of fun busting chops with players and who their teams are and stuff. And we're really lucky enough to have Chris come in from the Brisbane Lions, come down to us Vegas to talk to our team and be around us. Another Tasmanian premier winning coach. And to hear his words, and he spent 2 days with us at our practices, and to share those moments, it's really important for me to get across these other sports and understand what's going on in them also.
And the fan base is very loyal, and you touched on that. But loyalty in sport, it's a bit of a thing at the moment where you kind of maybe play for a couple of years, then you chase the dollars and move around, etc. What's your views on loyalty in sport, knowing full well that some of your players might go take her off for somewhere else and maybe potentially see them prosper?
Yeah, I think that in basketball, at least for my time, it's quite transient, especially the imports. The imports are hired guns that are being basically rented for a year or two, and they're just moving into the next spot if they can make more money and go. And your lifespan of playing is not very long. If you're lucky enough to play 10, 12 years, that's a wonderful career. The local players that are in Australia tend to stay a little bit longer in their areas or where they've grown up or come back to where they've been raised. I think there's a little bit more loyalty from that side of things. But we do have a great fan base in Tasmania. I think it is the best in the NBL. And we have an entire state, which is quite unique to everyone else. They might have a part of a city, but we have a big state that we're trying to cover from top to bottom. And for me to drive 5 hours or 6 hours into northern Tasmania and go to a gas station and go in there and there's a kid with a JackJumper shirt on that didn't exist 3 years ago was quite powerful for me of a reflection of where we've been. And our fan base is incredible.
Absolutely. I just want to touch on a second, like cricket. Have you followed cricket? You watched Test match cricket, and what do you think of cricket?
So, listen, my dad played professional baseball, and I couldn't stand it. And I played baseball, and it was just too slow for me. But I became very close with Tim Payne down in Tasmania, and so I've watched a little bit of it. I just don't get it, to be quite honest with you. And especially when you have to play a sport 5 days, I don't get that. I don't mind the Big Bash, Ashley. I watched the Big Bash. I like that 2 hour kind of concept.
Well, it's a great result this year.
Absolutely. Yeah. We got another championship team, the Hurricanes, with us, and it was a wonderful thing for the state again, and exciting. And amazing for Tasmania again to have another championship team. I love the Big Bash better than the actual cricket of the 4 or 5 day tests or whatever they're called. They're just too long, too slow, and hard for me to wrap my head around it. But the Big Bash, I don't mind that.
Yeah, so it's 5 days, and it's a test match, and you can actually have a draw, and it's not a tie, right? So
Yeah, that would frustrate me to no end to play 5 days, and I don't even know if I won.
Yeah, there you go. Scott, now I'm going to ask a couple of questions which I asked for my guests. One is the scoreboard moment, which is like a Kodak moment, somewhere in your life which is quite vivid and quite clear that from that moment on you think, oh, my life has changed.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of them, and I keep going back to the same one, and it's not obviously a great one, but I'm 26 years old, and I built a brand new house in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's my moment of making some money, and I'm proud of being this house that's being built. And my dad met me in the backyard. The house was about a month or 2 away from being finished, and it was a Saturday morning and no one around in the neighborhood. Unfortunately, I was with my dad in the backyard, and I turned my back, and he went down, and he ended up dying in my arms. And I spent 30 minutes trying to revive him, and screaming and hollering, and no one around, and just me and my dad. And that moment changed my life. It's been one of the things that I reflect upon mostly, and it is why I've changed my perspective in basketball and where I am. And those moments are, not, I would say unfortunate, they're just indelled in your mind, and to go through that, and I don't have a day that goes by that I don't think about that. But it also shows me the importance of where I am in my life and what is really important to me. And I didn't get a chance to say I love you to my dad or thank you or anything. And that 30 minutes was critical to probably what I've done over the last few years and who I've become, hopefully, as a person.
Scott, thank you so much for sharing that. I know it must be hard to talk about that moment, but obviously there's some positives that come from that, of which you wouldn't wish anyone to go through. On the flip side, or more of a positive, I ask people about their favourite all-time sporting moment. Your favourite you must have seen a few.
I guess there's just, 2 are going to jump out, and they're probably quite obvious. I made the NBA, that dream of actually getting the call and then saying, here's a 2-year contract by the Utah Jazz, and you're on your way to Los Angeles to play your first game. Just unreal moment for me, and the struggles and everything, and reflecting on what's going on in my life to get to that point. And then without question, winning this championship for Tasmania. I said it before, it's not changing my life, but it changed 500,000 people on that island's life to raise that trophy up and represent the state the way we did. A magical moment for us in a franchise that didn't exist 3 years ago, and to come in and have that moment and be able to share it back in Tasmania with everyone is going to be the highlight of my career.
That is amazing. I did an interview with Matt and Victoria Denholm recently from Hoops Capital and the Sydney Kings, deep, passionate Sydney Kings fans, and their scoreboard moment was when the Sydney Kings won the NBL title as well, which leads me to the Scoreboard Scramble, which is a 10-second little trivia question for you. And what you're going to have to do in these 10 seconds is I know it's late at night, so you might not be, the brain might be starting to go to sleep a little bit, but you're going to have to spell the word basketball backwards. And I'm going to start the timer for 10 seconds starting now.
Well, it's LLABTEK
Nailed it. That's as quick as you can spell basketball. Scott, your brain is humming right now.
I don't know about humming, but that's a heck of a thing, though.
You've just nailed it. I reckon that's the quickest that anyone's ever spelled it. We had cricket backwards recently, and we had swimming backwards, and that was a tough one.
As long as it wasn't like xylophone or something crazy, that'd have been fine.
Basketball is on the brain. I'm going to ask with one final question, which is in two parts. One is, what's some advice that you can give to younger kids right now playing sport that potentially want to be at the highest level and be a high performer and be a professionally paid athlete?
Well, I have 2 advices, one for parents and one for kids. I think.
Well, that was my second question, so let's do it in one, right? Yeah, the second one was about the parents.
For kids, it's real simple. I say it to everywhere. You got to play all the sports. If you love playing sports, go play them all. Enjoy them. Don't get too serious about them. Just go enjoy them and see what you gravitate to, one or the other. because ultimately sports is life. It is a quick way to really get life moments and test you and what a great teammate looks like and how to win and how to lose with dignity. All those things are just life moments in sports. And the biggest thing is you're going to have relationships that I have all the way back from people that I played with 30, 40, 50 years ago. Those relationships you'll have for the rest of your life. And so enjoy yourself and play them all, and don't get too serious until you get a little bit older and you kind of funnel yourself into one. The other one is, I always say this is, when your kids are young and they're starting to go through that process, the most dangerous time in that kid's life is the 15 minutes driving home after a game. The parent's in the front seat, he's driving home, your kid's in the back seat, and he might have lost the game and he's upset or whatever. And now the parent is for 15 minutes on the way home, browbeating the kid, telling the kid what he should have done, how he should have acted. And you're all in that moment. I think those 15 minutes are so critical to just take a chill, relax, let your kid, talk to you, listen to some music. But those critical 15 minutes are going to either keep this kid engaged and wanting to keep playing, or you're going to crush them to the point where they're just not going to want to do this anymore. And I think those 15 minutes are hugely crucial for parents when they're driving their kids home, especially after a loss or a tough defeat, and the kid's not responding well, or you're a parent and you think you should have done this, or you're yelling at them for whatever reasons. Those 15 minutes are going to probably determine whether this child's going to really want to play sports anymore, or really want to thrive in it, and he's too afraid to fail in front of you, and so he just ends up giving in.
Well, just on parent behavior, have you seen some pretty wild parent behavior in your time?
Well, I tell you, to be quite honest with you, in the States, it's ridiculous. It's very much more sane in Australia when I watch the games, although the parents can get a little into it a little bit too much. But in the States, it's over the top. When I was playing basketball, if you ever went to talk to a coach, a parent talked to a coach, it was the most embarrassing thing that could possibly happen. That coach was basically untouchable. Like, the parents would never approach a coach in those ways back in the day. They had the utmost respect of the parents and the kids, and the coach was just going to do his job. He's a teacher normally anyways, and you would never approach a coach. Now everyone thinks they can go approach a coach, tell the coach what to do, browbeat them, whatever they want to do. And it's quite ridiculous of the fights and everything that's happening here in the States. It's a little bit more conformed, I think, in Australia, but there's those moments that you got to bite your lip and you just got to do the right thing and have great sportsmanship. And it's tough sometimes because your kids are getting upset and excited, but it's not a good thing over here in the States.
What do you reckon? What do you reckon that's changed? Like, what's changed? Is it just, do you think there's just the
I think the boundaries have changed. I think the respect of coaching has changed in those aspects. Now so many parents are now coaching their kids. And so they feel like they know more, or my kid's being disrespected by the coach because he's not playing, or whatever it may be. And again, when I was growing up, you would never come to talk to my head basketball coach when I was there, because everyone was scared to death of him, first of all. And the parents would just know that those are boundaries that you just don't break, and that's his job. And if my son doesn't play, he doesn't play. Now everyone thinks they can step over those boundaries because they know better. They know more. They watch more TV. They're on YouTube. They understand what's going on. And the coach doesn't. And when ultimately, especially the younger kids, these coaches aren't getting paid anything. They're there to help the youth prosper. And it's just, I think the boundaries have just disappeared.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Well, it's a whole different conversation. We could go on for hours about changing, but I think it's a problem, as you say. Well, no, it's a problem, and we need to kind of have a solution pretty quickly. Scott Roth, thank you so much for being on Scoreboard today to share your story from the beginnings to playing in the NBA, which some people in Australia probably don't even know about. That you played in the NBA with all these amazing players, and to where you've been at the JackJumpers so far, the championship that you've won, but also the next phase moving forward under the new ownership and working with Christine. And I wish you all the best and looking forward to following your progress.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for having me.